Hello everybody and welcome to this week's bonus podcast where we have got round 2 of Corrieliminator. I'm Michael, I'm here, and to the side of me we have got... Gemma's here. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see me. Gemma is hiding from the camera, as always. Woman of mystery. But thank you everybody for joining us for Corrieliminator round 2. It seems like people enjoyed the first round of it. It was great fun for us to do. Nice and easy to prepare. But Gemma, do you want to give it a little bit of an explanation of anyone that's new what Corrieliminator is?
Corrieliminator is where we take 300 of the top characters of all time, and then we divide them into groups of 30. And then in that 30, they're randomly selected into groups of 30.
That's very important.
And then in that 30, we will select our top 3, and then those 3 go forward to the finale, where we will have 30 top 3 characters, and then from there, we will decide who's the best Coronation Street character of all time.
Lots of ranking. Everybody likes a ranking, don't they? We certainly did. And last time in round 1, we Corrieliminated everyone apart from Gail and Abby and Blanche. So everyone else who was randomly put into that top 30, cut. So we're going to pick another 30 today and then see if who's going to be saved and who will be Corrieliminated from there as well. And we also did have a listener vote. So thank you to everyone who participated in this. We got the results right here. Look, we got pretty close to ours, isn't it? This is quite interesting. Blanche got the most votes. So in the listener poll, she is going to be saved along with Gail and then also Vera Duckworth. But look how close it is between Vera and Abby.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you want to add any extra commentary other than yep?
They don't get Abby. I'm sorry, listeners.
They do.
But you decided.
People like Abby, but yeah, Vera's going through. She was like one of the closest ones for us, wasn't she?
I'm kind of glad that it's not too dissimilar from our top 3, but I'm pretty sure our top 10 is a bit different because I can see just Reg there with hardly any points.
Reg would certainly be in our top 10. But Amy got 21% of people voting for her. So she's is that right? I don't know what those percentages stand for. But anyway, Amy did well. And I think it's fair enough that she's in there.
Yeah, well, don't forget these are going to be weird percentages, aren't they?
Very weird percentages.
Because
Tyrone's
everybody
got a few
voted
votes.
for 3 people, didn't they?
Yes, they did. So these Blanche and Gail and Vera are all going to go into the listener final 30. So at the end of the year, or maybe it's going to be early next year, we'll put those all together and then you'll be able to choose your top 3 there and we'll find out who the ultimate winners are.
Yeah,
exciting stuff.
But today we got to select a new top 30, a new 30, and wait for our pool.
Yes, very exciting. We're going to be picking our next 30 now and voting for them. So let's get everything up that we need for this. I'm fiddling around with my Mac at the moment. I think right, you should be able to see what we're using on here now. So we've got our list of characters and we have got our random number generator. So Gemma's ready with a pen and paper. To write them all down for us, and then we're going to stop recording once we've decided this, and then come back a little bit later and do the rest, but you won't even notice. So we are picking numbers between 1 and 270. That's how many characters we've got left. We're going to generate 30 numbers. Let's see who's got this month. So first up we have got Ida Barlow. So that is Ken's mum. I can't see her being in the top 30, but we enjoyed Ida from what we've seen have her. Yeah, one of the first characters, or the first major character to be killed off on Coronation Street. And up after Ida, we have got David Barlow. So mother and son battling it out this month. That's quite exciting. We've also got Concepta Riley. Crikey, we've got some old school picks this time, haven't
ones,
we?
Yeah.
Yeah, Concepta, who was barmaid at the Rovers.
These are going to be chronological, aren't they?
I've made it chronological now.
Yeah.
I don't know whether we did this and that. It's going to make it easier for me. After that, we have got here's the first big one, Emily Bishop, Emily Nugent as was. She's in the contender. She's a contender this week. Will she be saved or Corrieliminated? Little bit of a jump next. Number 64 on our list. We have got Percy Sugden. I love Percy. He's a real favourite. Well, some people hate him because he was a bit of a cantankerous old git. But definitely classic Coronation Street character. He's going to be a difficult one to put to get rid of if we have to. Next up, we've got Debbie Webster. So recent return to Coronation Street just in the last 5 years or so.
I love her.
Lots of people love Debbie now. Underused, but yeah, she's this early in the list because obviously she was a character in the 80s first, and then came back after a bit of a break. Next up, we've got Don Brennan, old one-legged Don. I enjoyed him. He was he was a very complex character. He came in as kind of a nice guy, but by the end of it, partly thanks to Mike Baldwin and Ivy, he went out in a blaze of not so much glory, but
infamy.
Yeah, a blaze of infamy. After Don, we have got Jim McDonald. So we have. Oh my god!
Big one.
Surely, oh my god, we've got some huge
Jim
names
McDonald,
already.
Emily Bishop, Percy Sugden.
I mean,
Debbie
that
Webster.
could be our top 3 already, and we're barely into this. This is going to be a tricky one. Okay, after Jim McDonald, we have got Steve McDonald.
Oh no!
And Steph Barnes.
Oh, quite.
No, I thought that they were going to be maybe other McDonald's, but then I realised I've got all of those. So Steve McDonald, Steph Barnes. I don't think Steph Barnes is going to be making it here, but no. But Steve, what a... So we got mother and son with Ida and David, and then father and son with Jim and Steve. Okay, who we got next? Number 85 on my list is Vicky Arden. So we got Steve and first wife Vicky battling it out. Think I know who the winner would be there, but I feel that she's going to be fairly low down on the list. Although she's not too bad.
What, the 98, 99 and 100, are they all going to be?
We'll get there. Let's see.
I'm
We've
excited.
got 93 on our list is Tanya Pooley, Mega Bitch from the Rovers. Not going to be in the top 3. I think she's... You haven't seen a whole lot of Tanya either,
No.
have you? So probably she's not going to be
top 3.
ranking too highly here, unfortunately. But she was a... I've got a newfound appreciation for Tanya after seeing her on the classic Corrie repeats in the last few years. 98, 99, 100. So this is Maxine, Daniel... And
who?
Daniel Osborne, yeah, he's been in the show for yonks, has he? And Billy Williams, so Betty's second husband, not going to be in the top 3 or probably even the top 10 there, is he? But Maxine, brilliant character. Daniel, still in the show today and popular among some. Next up, we have got 113 on the list. It's our Toya. Toya Battersby has made the list for this month's Corrielimination.
Oh, what's going to happen there?
Oh god, she has got some real stiff competition. I can't wait to see where we end up with her. And then 119, Linda Sykes. So we got 2 mega bitches with Linda and Tanya going head to head. Not our Toya, of course not. No, she's lovely. Just a murderer. And Doreen Heavey, so Maxine's mum. Yeah, keeping it in the family this month. She was brilliant. Obviously a very minor character. She is going to be Corrieliminated for sure, but really fun character while she was there. After that, skipping down a little bit, 153 in the list, we have got Harry Flagg. Recently bowed out of Classic Coronation Street on ITV3. I don't think anyone's got a bad word to say about Harry, but equally he's not a fan favourite. Well, he's not a memorable...
He's not iconic.
Not an iconic character, but still absolutely classic. And then 154. It's Kieran McCarthy. Sticking over the other side of the Irish Channel, so it's going to be Kieran versus Jim McDonald. I really enjoy Kieran McCarthy. He's a good character. Next up, Tony Stewart. Okay, so we've got Jason's dad here, fairly early on because he was originally played by Alan Igban before being recast on his second appearance. 170, we've got... Who is it going to... It's Warren Baldwin. Footballer extraordinaire. He also, I'm watching him on Classic on ITV3 at the moment. I'm enjoying him a lot more than I thought I would. But I think once he goes,
like Warren Blandman.
Forget it. He's all right. He's quite fun. Then we have got Molly Compton.
Oh,
met her end at the tram crash there. Great final scene.
Dead.
But I think not remembered as highly because of just a little affair that she had with Kevin. Kind of ruined the character a little bit, didn't it? We've got next 191 in the list. It's Bring on the Sandwiches. It's Auntie Pam. Love her. Not iconic. Well, maybe she is.
She has to in the podcast.
Iconic with us. I think there's a lot of people that have got a place in their heart for Auntie Pam. Maybe not enough to put her in the top 3 against that competition. Gary Windass, played by Mikey North, of course.
Oh my goodness.
Hard man. I love him.
This is difficult. There's so many characters.
This feels more difficult than last month. It really does. And then right after Gary, we've got Natasha Blakeman. Now, I know a lot of people really, really love Natasha. We were never really big fans. So I think she's going to end up fairly low down. So apologies in advance for that one. But someone's got to be at the bottom end, haven't they? We've got 4 left. And first up, it is It's Tink's PC Tinker who's there on our list. We have also got Gemma. It's Pat Phelan.
I can't believe this.
Pat Phelan
I
and Jim
can't
McDonald
believe
in a
this.
fight together, and Don Brennan, crikey, it's all the baddies this month. This is going to
And
be
Toya.
really, really tough. I know, this is going to be a really, really
She's
tricky
a femme
one.
fatale now.
Yep, and 2 left. Our penultimate for this week. He has not, nor has he ever been a marine biologist.
I loved him.
It's Jude Appleton, and then
that even
finally, who knows? Rounding off the list at 266. New entry, it's DD Bailey.
This is difficult.
This is going to be a really
difficult.
tricky list. Well, as we're recording this now, we're not going to be doing the sorting straight away. We're going to come back in a few days and do the sorting. So give us the opportunity to
just think about it.
mull it over a little bit, and we will come back in a few days. But as I say, for you, it's going to be right now. So that's our list. Let's get Corrieliminating. Right, okay, let's do this. I'm excited. If you're watching the YouTube version of this, we've got a snazzy new background and everything. And I've moved. I'm over here now and I can see all these lovely characters ahead of me. I've realised already I'm forgetting that we're also doing this for audio, and we didn't describe something. The main thing is the audio for this, and there were some bits on the last section that we didn't really talk about enough, and we just assumed that people could see it. But never mind, this is our first one of these. So, how did we do this before? It was only like 3 weeks ago. We
just went through them all in order, I think, and decided
do we need to,
where in general we thought they should go. So
whether it's top, middle or bottom.
Not dilly-dally. Begin with the first person on the list.
Yeah, so we're just going to go through chronologically for this, Ida. So Ida Barlow there.
I love Ida.
Do you?
She was not in it for very long, was she?
She was in it less than a year. I think she's going to have to be in the bottom.
She'll be in the bottom 5, I'm afraid.
Bottom 5. Well, I'll stick her... We haven't got a holding area, have we? Oh, no. We did.
I did wonder why you did it like that.
Oh, we did it like that. Okay, right. I don't know what I'm doing. She's down the bottom here somewhere. Yeah. Okay, right. David Barlow.
David Barlow was quite fun.
Are we going to talk about... Did we talk about them more later on?
You sort of said a sentence about each one. So David Barlow's brother of Ken Barlow, who's a footballer. He was married to Irma Ogden, and he's a really nice guy. He was nice. He wasn't exciting particularly, but
he's one of these characters that doesn't have a whole lot of flaws, and if you just want a nice, well-rounded character, then he's your guy.
Not very exciting though.
Not especially exciting, but he appeared quite highly in Chris Anstey's list, isn't he? I think he was, up there among the top ones. I don't think we've seen enough of him, just me and you personally, and even what we have seen, it's a few years ago now, so he's starting to fade a little bit from my kind of memory. I think he's probably going to be another fairly bottom-y one. I mean, same with Conceptor. Both of these characters, very important, and then in that they are Corrie originals, but I don't know how much that they stand the test of time, at least for us.
Conceptor, Riley, then Hewitt. She was married to Harry Hewitt. Mm-hmm. She's Irish barmaid. She had a child.
Just gonna pop him down here.
She was the stepmom to Lucille. She was good fun. She was sensible, and she was a fairly likeable, but yet forgettable. I rate her quite highly myself, but that's because I really think that my eras in Corrie are like 2010 on, and
and we've seen bits of the other ones.
To 1970 probably.
Yeah, I enjoyed Conceptor. She was very much just like she wanted to get married to Harry, and then she was happy being a mum.
She's a very traditional value woman.
Yeah, yeah. I think she added a certain extra to the Rovers that we didn't get with Jack and Annie. But whether how much of a key character in the whole history of the show, from what we've seen, I don't know whether we can rate her that highly either.
No, I would put her before David, just because I would prefer her personality.
Still somewhere towards the bottom though.
David Barlow's a bit of a mystery to me still.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Right, okay, so we're on to the big guns now with Emily. So Emily, part of the show for the best part of 55 years, starting off as a very mousy, mild-mannered woman who was under the thumb of Mr. Swindley in the mission hall.
Yeah, she was...
didn't even get a first name for a number of years.
Yeah, Miss Nugent she was called. She was a kind of what would you call like a sidekick, wasn't she? She's like a religious sidekick.
Yeah. She was the Alice to Leonard Swinley's Geraldine Granger.
Yeah, if Alice fancied Geraldine.
It was some of those. I think Emily kind of wrongly gets categorised of and thought of just an old woman, even though people knew that she was in the show right from the very beginning. In some ways, she was a bit of an old woman right from the start, in that she was very traditional in her values.
Very religious, which is kind of a more dated attitude these days.
Yeah, but I think that I don't know much about kind of a middle period. I picture her quite well as being the original Miss Nugent, just not saying boo to a goose.
The mannequin parade episode was one of my favourite episodes of the 60s, and she was great in that. It's like deadpan ad-libbing to try to fill space as the chaos unfolded behind the scenes, as the models couldn't get their costumes on, and she had to kind of like fill time, and she was she got good comic timing. She was great with Norris.
Well, you alluded to her unrequited love for Mr. Swinley earlier on as well, and that's a really fun story arc as well. As she's kind of, especially through 1961, from the episodes of that we've seen, kind of trying to. She's kind of fawning after him, and him not noticing whatsoever.
She's like wistfully trying to gain his attention by being as mousy and demure as possible, which unfortunately is not really a great way to grab attention for yourself.
No, and there's a great episode with her dad come in as well, and he's like this real sergeant major kind of character, isn't he? Just like, what do you mean, why haven't you got a man yet? So he goes to see Leonard Swinley to ask his intentions, and it really brilliant to it kind of shows why Emily is the way she is, because of this, like you said, overbearing man has not let her have a single opinion of her own for the first 20 odd years of her life. But as she goes through the 70s and 80s, she starts to settle more into this not maternal role, because she was never a mum, but the wife of Ernest, who was again a very traditional kind of character, and then obviously she was widowed and was the spinster ever after, wasn't she? She was Tracy's godmum. I think the relationship that she had with Deirdre throughout the 80s and 90s was lovely. And she even had some fairly touching stories of her own in the early 90s, like when she was in love with, do you remember that vicar, Bernard, was it? And then he couldn't go out. He didn't want to stay with her because she'd had mental health problems, which reminded him of his mum, and the tragedy that Emily felt when she was rejected by him was heartbreaking. Then you got the Ramsay story when she was in love with Norris's half brother, and then you got the other side, which you start to see more of as we go into the second half of the 90s, which is the more rebellious Emily, climb up a tree when the Red Wreck's in danger of being bulldozed, save the cobbles in the 40th anniversary, and she became a bit more spunky. She kind of finally found her voice, didn't she? Yeah. In her twilight years. We assume that Emily is still going. She had got a bit of a rushed exit about 10 years or so ago now, and we always wondered whether she'd be back. Looks like it's not going to happen now. But I think that as a character who spanned so many years of the show, although I don't think she's gonna avoid Corrielimination, possibly she's got to be in the top 10.
Yeah,
don't you
I was
think?
Gonna say top 10.
Absolutely, she's in there. She's a utter Corrie classic icon. Maybe a bit of an always the bridesmaid, never the bride character in terms of stories.
I like the way that she's got a fairly consistent and cohesive life story in Coronation Street. Quite a lot of the older characters do in a way. Nobody sat down at the beginning of Coronation Street to write, not even
what are you thinking?
The guy who
don't give us dead air.
Tony
Warren.
Not even. Don't make fun of
I'm
me.
I'm not.
Tony, not even Tony Warren went and gave entire life biographies for every single character.
No.
But it's kind of a testament to the way that he envisioned these characters, that her story has made sense.
Yeah.
You could have guessed where her life was going, and I don't think that that's a cliche so much as something that has some truth to it. Because she was a very religious and a kind of oppressed young woman in her youth. She wanted a traditional family. She never was able to have children, and so she became Auntie Emily, a kind of auntie figure to many characters. And then as she grew older, she kind of gained a bit more confidence. She stood up for herself. She put Norris in this place from time to time.
Yeah, and Percy as well, our next pick. It's quite funny that those two are right next to each other in terms of how they were picked, because Percy was obviously Emily's lodger for many a year.
Percy's in my blank spot.
Yeah, he is. He's totally as somebody who was at his he was in his heyday from kind of mid 80s to 97. I think he left. He was one of the early victims of Brian Park when he came in as producer. But he's still a character that I think, even if you don't know a whole lot about him or have seen a whole lot about him, you certainly know him by reputation, don't you?
Stop looking at me.
Why?
Because it's bad for the video.
She's over here. Well, I don't know. I don't be talking to you and looking at our lovely viewers on YouTube. So he was a very kind of fussy, again, a bit like Emily's dad in a way, sort of overbearing, always thinks he was in the right, very pompous sort of character who, despite the fact that he was kind of beloved of viewers, was a bit of a pain in the arse, and you couldn't believe that Emily was able to put up with him as a lodger for so long. He really was a proto-Norris in many ways. He wasn't a gossip in the same way that Norris was, I don't think. But as somebody who was the thorn in Emily's side for many years, certainly a very memorable character for that. What is kind of what impressions do you have of Percy from what little you've seen or heard of him?
A grumpy old man who went to D-Day.
Oh gosh, yeah, the D-Day stuff when he and Maud and Maureen went across to the Normandy landing or the Normandy graveyards, and he was always kind of very blustery about his time in the military. Although, of course, rather than fighting on the front line, he was just there making gravy over under gunfire.
That's still hard.
Oh God, I'm not saying it is, but I think he liked to kind of make out that he single-handedly won the Second World War for Britain, and that would make him the kind of the butt of jokes of quite a few characters. But he was a lot of fun, but not a great character. And because Bill Waddington,
not a great character,
sorry, not a beloved person to live with is what I mean. And Bill Waddington came from the kind of the music hall. He was very on stage kind of guy, wasn't he, when he was younger? So he knew comedy, and he was able to bring that kind of irritating caricature sort of person to life perfectly as Percy. It's a shame that he ended up having to be forced out in a way by the Battersbys and the new era of Coronation Street that came flooding along to Weatherfield with the arrival of Brian Park. But I really did enjoy him. I don't know whether he's a top 10 character.
He's not as high as Emily.
He's definitely not as high as Emily. I mean, he was only in the show for 15 years or so, but I think he made his mark. I wouldn't be surprised if he made it into the top 10, but maybe we'll put him more towards the middle for now. I think that he's going to be in the top half at least.
Yeah.
Debbie Webster next. So
Debbie's really hard because I love Debbie so much. If this was just going on sheer personality, she'd be number one.
Well, we're partly correliminating according to our own personal taste and also significance of the show. We're just throwing a whole load of things together. Yeah,
significance to the show, minimal at best, I'm afraid, because they're not using her to her full potential. She is a firehouse and she's in there. But what big stories has she had? She was part of the Ray Crosby stuff. Mm-hmm. She kind of played Monopoly with the street a little bit for a while, but
alongside
didn't really
Ray Crosby.
Fruition. And at the moment, her main role seems to be popping up in Chariot Square Hotel and asking if they've ordered you drinks.
Yeah, that's kind of what she's there for, isn't she? She's got very eccentric fashion tastes. So the giant earrings like holy hand grenades dangling from her earlobes, the various animal print blazers that she wears. She's certainly smart, and she makes an impression for such a wee woman. But you're right, she doesn't add a whole lot, but just for pure campness, similar to Glenda, I suppose, I really love her. And I don't think anyone was expecting her to come back in the show. How long has she even been back in now? 4, 5 years.
I
kind
don't
of
know,
lose
but
count.
she's brilliant.
And I don't.
She's a top 10 for me.
Do you reckon? I don't know whether she does. Maybe
At the moment,
as a personal,
we can push her back.
We can push her back. I mean, I don't know anything really of Debbie from her 1984, I think it was, stint. Still played by
I just
Sue.
remember being told, she was played by the same actress.
Yeah, so that was quite a coup that they got her back.
After the mum died.
Yeah, that's right. Kev's mum had died, so it was him, Bill, the dad, and Debbie living together, and she kind of took on that mum role, and I think she delivered sandwiches for Gail for a bit, and then disappeared off for 30 odd years.
Become a property developer.
She's a real fun character. I'll put her around the Percy level at the moment, but I think in Corrie history, Percy at this stage is deserving of a higher slot. Don Brennan, I think that he's a great character. I think that he's kind of looked down on in terms of Corrie characters and their importance. But then again, I don't know how much of my love for Don is just based on maybe literally his final week, or his descent into madness that he went into once he got cancer, and then he realised he had nothing left to lose, and he went all out to try and destroy the life of Mike Baldwin. From what little you've seen of Don, do you what's your thoughts on where roughly he should place?
Top half, but it's difficult because I'm not really. I've forgotten who else we've got.
They're all there. In front
I know
of us.
that can. Yes, thank you. Again, he's in my blank spot, so I don't have a whole lot to say about
I think for most characters, if you're part of the late 1980s all the way through 1990s, it almost grants you a free pass up to the top half of the list, because it really was a bit of a golden era for Coronation Street. After everyone's got their favourite time on the show. Some people will swear by the 70s, but maybe it's just for me, and that's the era that I grew up in. But when in the early 90s, when Don was hobbling about with his one leg after that car accident, it was just wall-to-wall stars and icons. And although I wouldn't put him anywhere near up there with some of the other names that were out at that time, I think that he deserves a bit of respect and appreciation. And I thought that the relationship with him and Ivy was fantastic, and you got to see over the course of his time in the show, coming in as a relatively happy-go-lucky kind of normal guy, liked a beer, liked a game of cards, and then just turn into this bitter, I can't think of the word, old man, because of how Ivy just dragged him down with her old-fashioned values and her inability to get over the death of her son Brian. And then obviously Don had an affair. He started stalking Denise Osborne, which was a little bit odd for the character, and certainly not something that worked in his favour. But yeah, I kind of like to put for the moment Don somewhere around the middle, but yeah. I'd be happy for him to slide either way, to be honest. Right, we've got a couple of McDonald's chaps up next. Father versus son, Steve and Jim. Firstly, let's just be brutal about this. Who gets higher on our list, Steve or Jim? It's
got to be Steve for me, just because he's had longer in the
longevity.
Show.
Yeah,
he hasn't had the big breaks. I mean, he's still in it now. I think he's had bigger stories because most of it revolved around his wives. I don't know that he's that popular now, because I think he's kind of a silly...
It's been so funny seeing his popularity take a tumble over the time since we started the podcast. I remember, when we first started Conversation Street, and I'd be looking... I was never that much of a frequenter of Coronation Street websites before we started, but, looking on the blog, looking on the forums, in the kind of 2012, 2013, he was by far and away the most popular character on the street. Not even just male character. Of the current characters, everybody loved him. Nobody had a bad thing to say about Stephen. Yeah, there'd be laughs about his guns, and he'd have the Gun of the Week posts on the Coronation Street blog, but there was so much love for him, and it just seems to have taken a nosedive in the past decade, hasn't it? Partly, due to him being emasculated by Michelle. and Liz.
Him and Michelle together were terrible, in my opinion.
It really did a number on him.
Didn't like Michelle. She made a joke out of him.
And this, so did Karen, so did Becky, but it didn't. He was able to fight back, and he was able to give as good as he got. And we're seeing some of Karen's exit story on ITV3 at the moment, and Steve is still fighting back against Karen's overbearing, kind of naggy wife sort of persona. He was such a cool guy, especially, he came in as a teenage heartthrob in the 80s. He went through the 90s, he became a bit of a slick businessman with his t-shirt business, and then going into streetcars afterwards. You'd never know that from him now, would you?
No, definitely not.
He's just, I wouldn't trust him to
make my toast.
No, because he just, he speaks in the baby voice. He's dumb. He's played for laughs.
The trouble, what happened with him and Michelle is that when he was with Michelle, it kind of felt like he deserves this because he's a bad person and he's an idiot and she's cool and sexy and who does he think he is? And he's never really recovered from that, really.
No, I don't get it. I don't think it's necessarily Simon Gregson not trying or losing it. I think that Coronation Street just likes him as the butt of the jokes character and not much else.
Likes to turn men into idiots. And he does the same with women, so...
I still think, despite everything, if he doesn't get a top 10 position, there's something that's not quite right here.
I think he's a more significant character than Emily.
Gosh, I don't know. He's a real tricky one. That's the whole point of this. I suppose he's had more to do. He's had bigger storylines. I've got a whole lot more affection for Emily than Steve, but then maybe I'm just thinking of current Steve, and if I compare what did I think about Steve when Emily was still in the show, I liked him more then as well.
Mind you, Emily's had a longer history, hasn't she?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, she's got 30 years on Steve.
The other thing that's the trouble with current Steve is that the whole show is more of an ensemble show than it ever has been, and nobody's a main character for very long.
No.
So...
Yeah, so to Jim, again, I'm gonna say top 10 probably for Jim.
Yeah.
He's
ahead of Debbie and
Percy for sure. Yeah, very unlikable at times, dragging Liz out of a car and left her beat up on the side of the road, not his finest hour, shouting at anyone and everyone who had a different opinion than him.
He was a very strong-willed character. He was a no-nonsense kind of guy. I can imagine him watching Piers Morgan now and going, yeah, he knows exactly what life's about. He's a bit of a blowhard.
But in some ways, that's what made him popular and memorable. He certainly didn't ever sit on the fence.
No,
you had an opinion about Jim McDonald if you watched him.
You need characters like him because people like that exist in real life, and the thing about them is that they're also quite charismatic and likeable. And if you didn't get on the wrong side, then you could really get on with him.
Yeah. He had his catchphrases. That counts for a lot. I think he's probably got the most catchphrases of any Coronation Street character. And I just, and he was, apart from maybe his last stint with the Hannah story, which, nobody really thinks too highly of. I think he was relatively consistent. His love for Liz, his love, lust, passion, burning passion for Liz was fun to watch. And if you think about solid couples that were meant to be together, despite the fact that in many ways they weren't good for each other, Liz and Jim are right up there. So I think definitely a top 10 placement for him. Conversely, our next name on the list, Steph Barnes, unless anyone's got any objections, is going to be going fairly down the bottom. I think compared to round 1 of Corrieliminator, we don't have as many characters that are completely, I'm not going to say pointless to the history of the show, but
forgettable.
Yeah, or just didn't contribute much. And Steph was only in the show for a handful of years at the beginning of the 90s, married to Des Barnes, who was much more of a major character. But even now, I think whenever we get to Des on the Corrieliminator, he's going to be, wallowing towards the bottom, unfortunately. But where Des had his kind of cheeky cheeky charms and the pranks that he'd play on Derek and Mavis to keep him interesting. Steph, I've watched her era twice now, and I've not got very many memories of her.
Well, she and Des were like yuppies, weren't they? And this was the era where every TV show or movie had a pair of yuppies, usually dinks, and they were just in everyone's business being obnoxious. Yeah. And so there's no way to save that.
I mean, I don't think that they would go out and like, they're not showing off, hey, look at us, we live on the posh side of the street, not like Sally these days. But they were better off. Steph's dad was the guy who was in charge of building that side of the street. So she's very significant in that sense, I suppose. But she was, to me, no real loss to the show. The biggest thing that she contributed was probably shaving off Kevin's tash. And I remember a funny scene where she's walking around in the buff inside when Derek's spying inside and he gets an eyeful. But I don't...
30.
Do you reckon
we got to start putting people somewhere.
I don't know whether, Ida. I suppose Ida.
Ida's better than Steph.
Okay, another one that's going to end up relatively low down, although not completely inconsequential in Corrie's history, is Vicky Arden, or Vicky McDonald, née Arden.
It's really difficult because I'm sitting the other side of the screen and these are very small icons.
They are tiny, so we have got Vicky next. I'm going to tell you
that Vicky Arden, to me, from where I can see, because it's also, the screen's angled away from me, I thought that's either Vikram or it's possibly the puppet from the Saw movies. Because all I can see is
a lot of hair. Pale face, a lot of hair.
And lips.
Are you an ardent Vicky Arden fan?
30.
I thought you just said Steph was 30. She's definitely, to me...
She's got a horse called Horatio.
No, it's Saracen, thank you. She was the token posho. She's one of the poshest characters that Coronation Street's ever had.
That'd be a good patron, top 5
We've done top 5 poshos.
Richest.
I think it's probably... we did top 5 poshos about a year ago.
Was she on there?
She was, yeah, of course.
Sorry.
As Steve's first wife, she was completely unsuitable for him. I quite liked their little teenage romance, and she was breaking away from what was expected of her as the daughter of a fairly well-to-do family. So she was the granddaughter of Alec Gilroy, wasn't she? And that part of the family was estranged from Alec. So when her parents died in a car crash, she came crashing into Bet and Alec's life, and she was horrified by, having to live on the street like Coronation Street. But she saw a bit of rough in Steve, quite liked it, and their romance was quite fun. She got involved in their Radio Weatherfield that they did, the pirate radio. But
I think she was a well-observed posho.
Yeah.
In that she wasn't like one of these kind of caricature, completely unsympathetic.
No.
But she definitely came from a different world, and she failed to understand some of the things that were going on because of her background of privilege.
Yeah, she. I'm struggling to remember too many Vicky highlights. I enjoyed the story about her and Steve getting married and Alec trying to put a stop to the wedding. There was also a story where Steve was getting involved in dodgy business with stolen liquor, and I think she kind of. What did she kind of stood at, she put her name forward as, no, it is all down to me to try and stop Steve from going to prison. But honestly, she wasn't a huge loss to the show when she left. And as much as she was there in part of my formative years watching Coronation Street, she is not much more than a blip on the Coronation Street history. So
her and Steph can go in the bottom.
She's going to be towards the bottom for absolute sure. Tanya Pooley, another 90s character who, if you're a Curry fan from that era, or a modern fan who's just been utterly obsessed and watching all the episodes now, you're not necessarily going to know who Tanya is. And even me, I think she may have been in when I started watching it, but she certainly didn't leave any kind of an impression with me. And it wasn't until watching the repeats on ITV3 recently that I really got a sense of what kind of a bitch she was.
What bitch?
I kind of enjoyed her story, but not really. She had some secrets. She had a secret lover. I think I'm remembering this right. She was going out with Des when he was also trying to court Raquel, wasn't she? And she was, I can't remember whether she even knew, but so some of what made her so unlikable was how she was always trying to wind Raquel up. She was the one that sent her off on the merry dance to the supposed modelling photo shoot with Armani, and then it was actually a market stall. There was a great scene when Raquel finds Des and Tanya in bed, and then a big fight ensues. And but the fact that you're not really able to chip in with anything here means that in our personal top 30, and probably it's fair to say the general one, if we talk about significance in the show, as fun of as a blip she was, she's going to be another one that's probably going to end up in the bottom 10, would you say?
Yeah, easy.
Okay.
Why don't you put some of them up a bit?
No, I'll put Tanya there. There we go. Right. Into more of an era where you're starting to know the characters, some of the characters. Maxine, Gemma.
Maxine, so beautiful.
Yeah. Anything else? Don't leave me to do all the talking just because I'm the one that's on the camera.
Well, she died in a tragic way, but I think that's the most exciting thing about her.
It's not an unfair assessment.
Isn't it funny that she is married to a guy with a funny voice who's not very attractive?
Yeah, I mean, Ashley was certainly didn't believe his own luck when he ended up going with Maxine.
But that's the same with any man on Coronation Street, I'm afraid. They're not quite as good looking as the women in general.
It wasn't just that Ashley was bad looking. It was more that he was just a fairly meek... he wasn't a kind of a player. He certainly wasn't a manly man in any ways. But she wasn't really much to talk about. Well, she was. She liked her partying. She liked. She was lots of fun. She certainly drew the attention of any man who happened to walk past her.
Yeah, she's just very attractive. I think she skated by on her looks, which is what a lot of people do.
She had a good heart in there.
She was a nice person. She wasn't as nice as Claire.
It was a real shame when they had her have that affair or one night stand with Dr. Matt while Ashley was getting his vasectomy, because then that led to the Who's the Daddy story, and then Joshua was born, and the big reveal with, oh, it's not Ashley's baby, it's actually Max. It's actually Matt's. She did make a great victim for Richard Hillman. If you want to look at major characters that first big serial killer killed off, what a way to
she's probably the best victim of all time in Coronation Street.
Yeah, you should have stayed at the party, Maxine, is up there in Coronation Street. Not just like Coronation Street serial killer history, but Coronation Street history in general.
Also in television history, I think that's a really good British TV history. That is an iconic line.
Yeah.
But, when you have a character and the most exciting thing they did was die...
I think we're probably...
she's in my black hole of Calcutta.
But to compare to the others that we've... I think she's more of a middly character, don't you?
Yeah.
I think that she's an important... As a part of that era, an important character on the show. Probably higher than Don.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just the beautiful lady against aging grump that's talking there. Next up we got Daniel, who's this early because he was born in 94, 95 I think it was, but obviously we haven't got much to go on personality wise until his return in the late 2010s under Kate Oates, played by Rob Mallard. So what you definitely got some opinions on Daniel.
I love the way he was brought in as like the psycho that pushed Ken down the stairs. And the big secret.
That was all in his first year.
And really, he hasn't changed since. Like, lots of people mellow out, but he's just still simmering on the edge of psychopathy. If he turns out to be a serial killer, if they decide to get rid of him for some reason, I can't imagine they'd ever really want to get rid of the son of Ken Barlow. No. But if they ever did, that would be a perfect way to get rid of him, because it's always been there.
He's got this unhinged streak, hasn't he?
Like,
we saw it right back from, pushing Ken, but also the feud with Chesney.
Yeah.
When they were fighting over Sinead.
Pushing Max down the stairs. I mean, even being in a feud with a child at school is unhinged.
He seems so affronted the fact that he's under suspicion for Lauren's murder.
Yeah.
But honestly, Swain's not wrong. If you look back on his history on the show in the past 5 years, he's got, a number of misdemeanors under his belt, most of which involved his temper.
Yes, exactly. He like I said, he's got a big pedigree.
I do love how they brought him in as a kind of a new Ken. I think he's moved slightly away from that. He's not quite so 18th century poet as he was back then, with the floppy hair.
I think that the 18th century poets were quite violent as well.
Oh, well, I don't know. It's my idea of one. He's kind of toughened up and bulked out, and he's got the stubble and the shorter hair now, but he's still...
Works in a prison.
Yeah, but he's still an intellectual at the end of the day. And he knows how to use an apostrophe and can spot an incorrectly placed one at 50 feet. But I think he's lost that edge a little bit, which is a shame, because I liked that was one of the things that made him a little bit different. But you're right, we still do have the anger side to him. I just think that he's, it's just a bit of an odd choice in women. He likes the younger blondes.
He's like his dad more than he realises.
Well, Ken was similar, wasn't he? You're right.
Such a lack of self-awareness about how much like all the other men he is. He's like, I'm not like the other guys. I'm a nice guy. No, you're not. You're a psychopath who is after your underage women.
Yeah, for sure. Where are you thinking for Daniel? I'm kind of going middly for him, upper middly.
Top 10.
Do you reckon?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Fine. Well, I mean, that's good. I mean, I don't want to let recency bias affect us here, because we do only have 5 odd years to go by. But I'll put him loitering around Debbie Webster for the time being.
The thing is about Corrie recency bias is that there are way more episodes now. And so even if you've not been in it, if you only been in it for 5 years or 10 years or whatever, you still had probably
hundreds of episodes.
More episodes,
that is very, very true.
Even if the focus isn't necessarily as strong as it used to be.
Yeah. Okay, let's just put Billy Williams, who's our next pick, right down the bottom. He came into the show as an old flame of Betty's from I think it was from VE Day.
He's
they
30.
met. We can only have one at 30. They reconnected after all this time apart from each other. They had a bit of a whirlwind romance. They got married. He went off screen for a bit. He died off screen. He was just kind of a nice old guy, which was made a pleasant story for Betty for a couple of years, but I can't say much more about him than that. I mean, I'd put him under Vicky Arden for sure. He's I'd have to see how
30.
he compares to Steph, honestly. Right, Gemma, next one.
This is hard. This is
we
our
got
girl.
our girl Toya. He's a bit of a podcast favourite.
Murderer.
Yeah.
Vegetarian.
Yeah. Protester.
That's
trained counsellor. Don't forget that.
Yeah, she is.
She's got to be top 10, and that's not just our bias for how much we like her.
No, she's a significant character. She's. It's really hard for me to have perspective. I'm going to be honest.
It's going to be. I don't think that she's gonna avoid Corrielimination. That's the problem.
She might be Corrieliminated.
There's probably just a few more that are gonna oust her.
Yeah, I mean, she's had some massive stories since she came back. She was involved in the baby story with Eva. That was massive. And then she had her her surrogacy stuff. She was the landlady of the Rovers. Everyone forgets, I think. She's done so much.
It was a forgettable era, but
since she's come back, I think that they don't know what to do with her. Is my
they absolutely don't know what to do with her.
I don't know that the way that the show works at the moment really helps facilitate a place for her. She doesn't have a home. She's living with her sister.
I think sadly Imran getting killed and Charlie deciding to leave hasn't been good for Toy, because they did have a really good thing going. I enjoyed in it. I thought it was very sweet, the fostering story, seeing him hide.
It's not down to him deciding to leave, it's what they've done.
What they've done with him since. I don't blame Charlie for this. It's what they haven't known what to do with her since, because
I think the biggest mistake they made was killing Imran off, and
100%.
Obviously I'm biased, and
they were made for each other.
But the fact that he's not in the show and he can never come back was such a massive lack of foresight, I think.
Yeah.
It didn't make for a compelling story, particularly because they flubbed it. And she still is a killer who hasn't been faced justice, and now they've got this baby story with her, which again I think
it's
was
just lingering
poorly
at the
conceived.
moment. Yeah, and she is a bit of a joke now. She's a square, and she's always been a square, but with a little bit of, fire in her belly when there's a cause that she feels strongly about.
She's just a thoughtful, professional woman, and when she was with Imran, she had somebody to bounce off of, and they were just a normal, nice couple. But where she is at the moment, nobody appreciates her. Like Nick and Leanne, I don't think they know how books open, to be honest. I mean, they're perfectly, Leanne keeps making cracks about how Toya's supposed to be the smart one and everything. It's just because she knows which way up a book goes. Doesn't mean that she's that clever.
She was a lot of fun, was Toya, in the 90s when she came in. The both of those Battersby sisters were created to cause a splash and upset the apple cart, and they absolutely did. Having her in the stories with Spider, where she'd be protesting and dumping antifreeze on the Norwegian prawns at Furman's freezers, protesting in Alf Roberts' garden over the council digging up the red wreck. All of that was a lot of fun, and she kind of settled into a bit of a, just living in the flat with Fizz and Maria, and then kind of left without a whole lot of fanfare in 2003. But since she's been back, I think this is probably her quietest period. They have at times given us some great stuff to do, but I still think we're waiting for that one big story that Georgia Taylor is absolutely capable of carrying.
Georgia Taylor is an exceptional actress, which is what makes it so frustrating to see them squandering Toya and the potential there.
But I'm so glad they brought her back.
The bistro.
Yeah.
It just feels like she's got some potential in spades, and I just love her. I think. But,
I'm putting her in the top 10.
The stories are not there for her at the moment.
No. Linda Sykes is up next. So one of Mike's many wives came in as a bit of a chavvy factory girl and set upon seducing him before getting into his bed. She was just a bit of a money grabber, really. She did have a head
She's what people think Jenny was doing.
Yeah. She wasn't all bad. But and she was a great friend to the factory lot. She had her head switched on. She was the one that put an end to the strike when Toya and Betty and whoever else it was, Gina, was striking over the new uniforms that Dougie Ferguson was trying to introduce. So she had a bit of a business head on her for sure. But I think in the annals of Corrie history, she's more of a forgettable character. Obviously the big story was the affair that she had with Mike's son Mark, and that was just a bit salacious and seedy and grubby. And if you look back on a character and those are the kind of adjectives that you're using to describe the stories that they were involved in, it's not necessarily going to look good for the character.
She's like a Maxine level, maybe below Maxine.
I don't know whether she's going to end up in the middle, to be honest. If anywhere, it's going to be lower middle.
You're making a mess now.
I know I'm making a mess on the script. It will all become okay when we sort them. Doreen Heavey, played by Prunella G, absolutely wonderful actress, fantastic character, but definitely a minor character, wasn't she? I remember when we were watching the DVDs and you were like, who's this? And then this was an instant fall in love with the character for you. I don't know how many episodes she's got under her belt, but I'd be surprised if it was more than 50. But as a kind of an aging, not bimbo, maybe it was a kind of a bimbo character. She definitely cared an awful lot about her looks, and a bit like Maxine had a husband that you can't believe what on earth are they doing together. They're completely mismatched, with kind of the gruff, grumpy Derek, very down-to-earth guy with a bit of a beauty queen on his arm.
She's like a parallel universe Audrey.
Yeah, I mean, she had scenes with Audrey, of course, because of the Maxine connection in the salon. I'm struggling to remember or picture any I remember this Doreen moment here. apart from after Maxine died, and she was
She's-
absolutely wonderful.
She's at the bottom just because she didn't have enough to do.
She's towards the bottom, but I've got a lot stronger positive feelings towards her than I do of, say, Vicky, who
Yeah.
was arguably a more important character and in the show longer, and obviously Steph Barnes and Billy Williams, who I don't care one way or the other about. This is just a character I'd love to have seen her developed more.
Yeah.
But once Maxine was gone, we barely
it.
saw her again.
Got fired into the sun.
Harry Flagg is going to be next. Again, it could be a lower end of the list. I think he's a character that lots of people enjoyed, but nobody's going to say he's coming anywhere near a lot of the rest that we've got here in terms of significance.
Just a nice guy.
He was a nice guy. He was the Rovers cleaner. He was a very good cleaner, and he impressed. I think it was Fred in the Rovers by just how meticulous he was. He understood the importance of a job well done, and he was very level-headed. There was a bit of something going on with Eileen for a little bit. He never had a story. He was kind of that era where some characters did come in and they were just side characters, like some of the factory girls were at the time, like your Bobby Lewis's. He was involved when Preston King died of his heart attack, and and Preston thought that Harry was like Mike's right hand man in the factory when he was just the cleaner. So he certainly had his head screwed on. But he kind of disappeared off. There was a bit of a story with his, I think, dead daughter. I can't remember now, even though I just watched it. But for sure, we've actually got quite a number that are bundled towards the bottom of the list, haven't we? So some of these may well escape into the teens, Kieran McCarthy, I would say, is more of a middle-ish sort of character.
Yes. I mean, he's so charming and ladies' man, isn't he? And so great at singing, and
Yes, he had that Irish charm for sure.
he just always seemed like he was laughing at a joke that you didn't know.
I remember when he
Punchline
was
or-
cast in Coronation Street, and I couldn't believe it because my sister was so into Boyzone when she was younger, and I used to kind of make fun of her a bit about that. And then to have a Boyzone singer come into Corrie for a fairly decent stint. Was he in Corrie for like 10 years or
He
so?
was in
Maybe
it for a long time.
longer
and he
than
was
you think.
Incredibly competent as an actor.
He absolutely was.
You wouldn't go, "Oh, he's this washed-up pop star."
No, not at all. He was in a similar way to how Les Dennis really surprised us by he's just a game show host. Oh no, actually he's bloody brilliant.
Yes. I can't see him as anybody but Kieran McCarthy because I don't know. Didn't know Boyzone. I don't know what their songs are, so it didn't have any baggage for me to try to overcome. So just him being like the cheeky chappy, like ladies' man.
I don't think they often gave him much heavy material to do.
No.
He really was. He had the courtship with lovely Sunita, and I can't remember much of who else. He was just there, adding a bit of charm. He had a rivalry with Roy because he was a top chef as well. He had his own restaurant that lasted for all of a week or so before it completely the bottom dropped out of it and nobody wanted to go anymore. Not hugely memorable in terms of stories, but I think that charm has won us over, and he's probably going to end up somewhere around the middle.
Yeah,
I would say. Tony Stewart.
Tony Stewart, come on now, let's just put him at the bottom.
Is he 30, Gemma?
He's 30.
We got
The fact of the matter is, the only thing I ever remember is he stacks his tea bags.
He teabags up, and that was
And
only
he had a heart
posthumously.
attack, and he was Jason's dad.
It was really funny kind of watching the original incarnation of Tony Stewart on ITV3 recently when it was Alan Igban that played him, and he really was a bit of a kind of slimier, nasty kind of man.
I
He
have
was
no conception of him.
an utter layabout and a waster, and always trying to get out of any kind of responsibility, and it's no wonder Eileen didn't have a good word to say about him. If, by the way, you're not sure who Tony Stewart is, it's Jason Grimshaw's dad. Absentee father, came back in for a bit more of a stint in the early 2010s, had a ill-advised affair with Tracy.
I don't think there's ever a good time to have an affair with Tracy.
He was confident. He was a very accomplished actor. I can't remember what the name of the guy was who played him second time. Terence Maynard, was it maybe? But when they decided to write him out, there wasn't a tear shed here. I'm not going to say he's missed.
Rude.
Sorry, Tony. You were important-ish for a time, but you have not stood the test of time. And another one who's going to end up low-ish next, Warren Baldwin.
No, 30.
Out of... I'm the one with the mouse, Gemma.
I know. You're making a mess with it.
I'm making a total mess with the mouse on the screen. Out of all of the Baldwins that were introduced in the early 2000s... Yeah, he's kind of the James Bailey.
James Bailey, yeah.
And he was also a professional footballer,
yeah.
So kind of I think there's definitely a similarity there.
Just dull.
Up until he didn't last long in the show because I think he went off to Spain to live for after a while.
Give me that mouse.
No, all of the other characters had some kind of storyline of their own during the brief 2-3 year period was it that the Baldwin clan were in Weatherfield. He was in it a lot less. He didn't have much of a story. He courted Candice for a little bit. I did kind of like how much he fancied himself. And Candice, she was like as superficial as you come, and she just fell at his feet when she realised all the shopping trips that she might be able to go on dating a footballer. He wasn't really boring, or at least now I'm watching him now he's not. He's quite kind of switched on really. I'm enjoying the banter. There's so much kind of Cockney banter going on across the dinner table in the Baldwin's house, but I'm not going to say that he deserves to be anywhere other than the bottom 10. Which is now, as I say, bulging at the seams, the number we've got in there. Bit of a middly character next. Molly Compton, as was when she came in.
Molly Strumpet, more like.
Well, she started off as such a nice character, didn't she?
She's such a nice girl.
Well, her first appearance was when she came in, and I remember her being a bit mean to Fizz because it turned out that Fizz had bullied her when she was at school. But once that was all ironed out, she was a really kind of kind, caring, motherly, safe kind of a woman who was perfect for lovable teddy bear Tyrone. And then Kevin came along.
Betrayed him.
And the character assassination that poor Molly went through when whoever it was at the top that time, Phil Collinson was it? I can't remember, decided that they were going to have Kevin want to jump Molly's bones and get into bed with her. It was such a shame because she was a great actress and they were just doing nicely. But I suppose in the same way that Kevin and Sally were doing nicely when Brian Park came along, sometimes you just got to split them up. It's just icky. And I think if you think of, what are some of the most ill-advised and I can't believe they did that storylines in Coronation Street of all time, particularly, of the middle era, and you could say that there's quite a few storylines like that now. Mulvin, as it was known at the time, for the Molly and Kevin couple, is just right up there. She had a brilliant death.
Yeah. She, like Maxine, she was a nice girl who made a mistake and then died.
Her death is easily one of Corrie's best. As part of the tram crash.
One of the best deaths, one of the best episodes.
Yeah. So
does
she's
that
got
give her a boost?
I think in a way it does. I think it probably does put her in terms of memorability higher than all of these that we've got in the bottom 10, but I'm going to put her maybe lingering under the likes of Don Brennan and Kieran McCarthy as a high teen.
This is driving me mad. How messy this is. It's
sorry,
really driving me mad.
Just don't look. It's fine. We'll sort it. It'll all become nice and organised soon. Auntie Pam, Molly's Auntie Pam. What do we remember about her? Baskets of sandwiches and schemes.
She's kind of a bit like Bernie in that she was
an underdeveloped
solidly working class grafter who was loyal to her family and had she had this kind of pleasant charisma about her. Wasn't
afraid to do a bit of underhand dealings to get what she wanted for herself and her family as well.
I really liked her.
I really liked Auntie Pam. I loved how even after Molly died, she still remained part of the show for a little bit on Bill Webster's arm. But then when Peter Armitage left the show, she had to go with him, and we didn't see a whole lot more of her after that. I think she's one of these characters that maybe, in some ways, only being used for a little bit has kind of made her a little bit legendary. She's one of these characters that if you were there watching at the time, you go, oh yeah, I remember Auntie Pam, good old Auntie Pam. A bit like Graham Proctor, who was similar. I think that there were probably some schemes that Graham, who was much her junior, and Pam would get up to together. And if maybe she'd stayed in it longer, like, more people would have kind of got onto the joke, you know what I mean? And she wouldn't be as fun anymore, because she'd just be a kind of minor character that never really had a whole lot to do other than prop up other people's stories. Where are you kind of thinking for her? Midway? Lower midway, maybe? I think in terms of importance, she's probably, maybe she is under Linda Sykes. But in terms of I like her, she's higher. So I'll kind of put her around about there at the moment. Such a dilemma. Right, we're on to the big guns now, and some characters that are still in the show for the most part. More recent characters. Well, Mikey North, who plays Gary Windass, has been in the show for the best part of 15 years, more than that now. If you haven't seen him, what he was like when he first came into the show, you really must Google some early photos of him. When we saw Mikey North recently on the Isle of Wight in that stage show, they brought out
they showed some pictures of him
2009's Gary with his kind of slipped down hair and his grotty ratty beard,
tracksuit.
He's definitely smartened up in the intervening years, hasn't he?
Him.
Now he's turned into a bit of a businessman.
Still a murderer at heart.
Yeah, well, Ian McLeod tried to turn him into a bit more of a bad boy, but he kind of came in a bad boy, an actual proper bad boy, because the Windasses really were the lowest of the low kind of family.
Yeah.
They were from the estates, weren't they? And when they moved into Coronation Street, it brought the tone down somewhat, much like when the Battersbys moved in.
Yeah, they were trying to do that again,
but Gary's kind of moved on from there. Anna, his mum, mellowed out as well. I'm gonna say that Gary's not the most exciting of characters.
No,
I've got more of
solid.
Yeah, he's totally solid. I do have more of a soft spot for him. Now we've seen I know it's very superficial. Now we've seen some scenes filmed with him and Samia.
And
Mikey North himself is the nicest guy.
Nice guy. So
yeah.
Get points for that.
But in terms of kind of excitingness as a character, he certainly had some big stories. As you know, the villain,
massive
as
stories.
The lone ginger.
I loved him in his villain era. I think that was peak Gary. I don't know why he became a reformed family man. I want him to revert back to being feral again.
He went through a period of was he that he would always be beaten up?
Yes.
But now he's turned into more of a beater-upper.
And him and Maria, butter wouldn't melt in their mouths, but they're both psychopaths. You know, she was a stalker.
Yeah.
He's a murderer, and now they're pretending to be a respectable couple.
Yeah, but I think both of them have kind of forgotten their dodgy past.
Yeah, I mean, he's a top 10 for sure.
Do you think? I would put him more in the lower teens, but maybe he is high. I guess he's higher than Debbie, isn't he?
Debbie.
Yeah, let's have him locking horns with Daniel at the moment.
So
okay.
it looks like you can't see our screen if you're listening to the podcast, but at the moment Debbie has a devil and an angel on either side of her, and one's Percy and one's Gary.
Okay, Natasha Blakeman. I'm just a bit nervous about talking about her because I know how popular she is with a big amount of the Corrie fan base, but she's never grown on me.
No. Well,
I don't get it.
I think people are just trying to be, I don't know, contrary.
With some, no, I don't think they are. I think with some characters,
she had a great exit, and that was it.
She had a great exit the first time round.
She got killed the second time, and the first time she went, "I hate everybody. See you later."
With some characters that I don't like, I can totally get why they are so popular with certain people, but I genuinely don't get it with Natasha. Her first stint, I remember, she was brought in as very much a side character. She was in the salon with Audrey, Maria maybe at the same time, and months went by where she did nothing apart from cut people's hair. Then she had a relationship with Nick, which turned a bit toxic. and then she disappeared off in a blaze of glory, which, like you said, was absolutely fantastic. That's one of Corrie's best ever non-death exits, like triumphant exits. It was superb. But then even when they decided to bring her back a couple of years ago, even then she was only a little bit on the show. She was almost used as a vehicle to get Sam into the show rather than being a character in her own right.
She was just like, I'm a business lady and I'm from London. And it reminds me a bit of like Violet. No, I'm in London, so I might as well be in Saudi Arabia.
You're right, she was a bit of a Violet, she was a bit of an Angie Freeman, and I get that lots of people like that sort of character. She was certainly intelligent, like she wasn't Angie. At all fist-wifey. Angie Freeman, yeah.
No. Who
Angie Appleton.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Like, I can do business. I've got my own business. I don't need to... This is the problem.
My string of salons.
Once you get an independent woman with her own source of income, she doesn't need all the crap from the street. She doesn't need all this rubbish from neighbours and boyfriends and hangers-on. She just goes to London and makes a fortune.
I mean, for me, I would say in terms of how much do we personally like her, low down. In terms of has she made any significance to the show, fairly low down.
She had one great
This isn't gonna make us popular, but sorry, she's gonna be definitely lingering down the bottom of the list.
I just think there are a few people who are very, very vocal that like her. That's what I think.
I don't know. Maybe.
I want to see what the listener vote is on this one.
Craig Tinker next. Oh, he's just gone downhill a little bit. I think I liked him when he first came in. When he was a big chubby mute teenager with his pet rat.
He was a bit of a chav, wasn't he? Because he was just like a slob.
Yeah.
With a rat and a horrible mum.
Well, no, Beth wasn't horrible at the start. Beth was loving. She had the sea necklace, and
what did that stand for?
And they made a nice kind of pairing. But I can't think of... I suppose Craig, to me, his best story and his best relationship, if you like, on the show was when Faye was pregnant and he was the supportive secret keeper.
I mean, he's a bit of
really
a joke,
quite sweet.
Isn't he, as a character?
Now he is.
Even the characters on the street don't take him seriously.
No, even like this week, Kit... DC Green made a bit of a snide remark about him. I'd feel bad if I was Coulson.
Top of the second half.
What, top is in low teens or high teens?
Like 16.
Yeah, probably. He's definitely, in terms of importance, he's higher than a lot of the other characters that we've ranked lowly. But, in terms
That's just sheer force of, being in it for a length of time.
It really is. It really is. Sorry, he's a nice guy. He's got that going for him. He's harmless.
Coronation Street has made a bit of a mockery of him because he even had that OCD story, and then we were like, we're happy to forget this happened, Coronation Street, because you've really messed this up. And then they mentioned it again the other day.
Recently.
It's like, you have to let this go. You can't make him. You can't give him this incredibly serious and crippling mental health issue and then not mention it apart from in passing when they're talking about who wants a spring roll.
He's just a bit of a dope. He hasn't got a load of friends. His sole purpose now, especially now that Faye's left, has been to
deliver news and tell people secrets.
Tell people things, highly classified police secrets that they shouldn't know, which is kind of a funny running joke, although I don't know how much of a running joke it is.
I don't hate him at all. I just don't take him seriously.
And then he comes in and arrests people. When he comes with his calming demeanour.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to take you down the station. I always think
come on, Craig.
Craig, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Right. I mean, Pat Phelan.
Come on.
At the top. He's at the top, isn't he?
Top dog.
Is he number one? Are we gonna put him there straight away? This is our poll.
Is it a bit rude to put him ahead of Emily, who was nearly victim of a serial killer herself?
Not him though. In terms of characters that we both absolutely adore, he's right up there. In terms of overall significance in the show's 63-year history, he's not, is he? Because he was in it for a decent amount of time for a Corrie villain. They really extended his time on the show. There
are certain categories of character that immediately have more significance because they generate discussion more than others. So, Latin Lady of the Rovers, you could be in the show and not be really, a big character. But if you're the landlady, you're going to be a part of an elite group of characters. And serial
Not that
killers
means
and
that Stella
villains-
Price is going to be anywhere near the top 10 of whatever
but
list she appears in.
Serial killers and villains are their own category, aren't they? And you have to give a bit more significance to that group of people, because when they are in the show, they're the centre of the show.
Yeah.
And that's why people hate them.
And whichever side of the fence you come on, the fact that anybody was able to appear on the street in the 2010s, when Corrie, people might say was past its best, someone who was able to come in and even be in the same discussion as, is he better than Richard Hillman? Has Richard Hillman finally been topped? That says a lot. Even if you kind of say, no, Richard was better, you got to admit that Pat Phelan's snapping at his heels. We thought that was one of our favourite times, or that was our favourite time
era of Coronation Street
since we were doing the podcast. Conor McIntyre had a lot of time for us and the podcast as well, which is always lovely. Not that we can be bribed by attention or anything. He was such a strong actor. He was such a complex character. We did a whole episode based on him before we did any of the extended character profiles. We did our top 10 Phelan scenes. It was absolutely superb as a character. Dark, but he had a nice side to him as well.
Charismatic, magnetic.
Just one of Corrie's best ever characters, and a modern icon,
villain ever,
quite possibly. Don't know where he's going to end up. There were so many
great twists in his story. With it turns out he had Andy in the basement all along, and we were like, can't believe this is actually happening.
Yeah.
This is brilliant, and the dark and the light. The lighthouse scene, him turning up dead, like
the rivalry
like
with Michael Rodwell, and I loved Michael Rodwell, so it made it even harder to know who do I want to come out on top in this in the latest argument that they're having. So
he tried to kill Michelle, so props to him for that.
Having him kind of standing over Michael as he succumbed to that heart attack was tragic. I was like, no, don't let him die. But then I kind of wanted him to get away with it as well, because I needed him to stay in the show as long as possible. The flat scene, getting angry in the van, everything with Vinny and his mum Flora. Was it Flora? I think it was Flora. The scene on top of the flats with Eileen when we were like, is he going to push her off the edge? So many brilliant Pat Phelan scenes.
Yeah. And the bit where he's screaming behind the wheel of his car.
Yeah. Just
great.
Oh my god.
The way that he hoodwinked everybody for so long.
Yeah, because of how charming he was. He charmed the residents of Coronation Street. He charmed the viewers.
Tried to steal all their money.
Yeah.
Good job, man.
And Andy and Vinny's death scene, by gum.
Dark. And the scene where he was dragging bodies through the rain.
Yeah. He was such a great physical actor
was,
as well.
So good.
Yeah.
I mean, is our top 3 gonna end up just being
Phelan.
No, Phelan, Uncle Stephen, and Richard Hillman. It could possibly work.
I'd still be surprised if Stephen gets into a top 3. It depends who he's up against, doesn't it? Right, we've got 2 left, and then we'll start to rank them. No, there is nobody behind me. I've organised this perfectly.
Are you a character?
Yeah, you can drag me on too if you want. Jude Appleton. Bit of a joke of a character,
but he's iconic, isn't he? In the fandom. He's just like an inside joke now for Corrie fans. I love him, he is
a joke of a character. He's not in the middle. He's lower than the middle.
Are you kidding? I love him.
I think it would be odd to have him anywhere near the high to mid teens. I'll put him kind of for the moment around kind of Linda, Craig, Auntie Pam territory. It doesn't feel fair to Craig to put him higher than him, because he was only in the show for a little bit. Just his whole ruse about being a marine biologist and compulsive liar was hilarious, but what... I don't know. I just don't think it necessarily stands the test of time. His final scenes in Blackpool as well, where he's parading around claiming to be Dr. Ken Barlow, brilliant, and it brought out a different side of Mary as well. But
I love him.
Finally, we've got one of your favourites from Ian McLeod's tenure. We've got Dee Dee Bailey, Diana Bailey. Difficult to rank this one.
Hotshot lawyer.
Difficult to rank her because she is so new. She's only been in the show 2 years? 3 years? I can't remember. Really difficult to rank her because
But she's packed so much into those episodes.
they really are
She's
using her a lot, especially compared to Glenda.
been in everyone's stories, doing worthy good things.
Yeah.
She's a likeable person, and I think she's got the makings of a good, solid Corrie character. I definitely think she's in the top 10.
No, she is not in the top 10. She's not. There's too many other icons that I think that should go ahead of her.
Well, I can't tell because you've just made a mess everywhere.
Well, we'll start to sort it in a minute. I think that, Maxine is more of a classic Coronation Street than Dee Dee is. She is. I think that Don Brennan is as well. Maybe once we get into the bottom half, the Molly Dobbs, the Pam Hobsworths, the Linda Sykes, I might be more comfortable with slotting her in there, but she's not been in the show long enough yet to be able to say that she's a top tenner for me.
Michael's top 30 then, isn't it? Not mine.
No, we're doing it together.
We're doing it together, but you just, every single time I say anything, you say, oh no, not there.
We got to have a compromise. That's what a marriage is about, isn't it? Right, we've kind of done our rough sorting now. Now it's time to put them in order. Stop it. Stop moaning about.
Do what I want.
30 down to 1. Do you want to do the bottom set first?
Well,
so at the
I've
moment,
got so many candidates
1,
for
2,
number
3,
30.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well, in this group here, towards the bottom, we've got 12. So some of these are going to make it into the teens. Number 30, I think it's going to have to be... I'm going to say Billy Williams, probably.
Yep.
Just in terms of overall importance and memorability. And then let's get Warren out of the way here. And
Warren
Tanya.
can go next.
I would say Steph next.
All right, then fine, say Steph.
But I mean, we could.
It's your top 30.
It's not okay. Look, I'll put Warren. I'm going to put Steph there at number 28. You can have
How
Warren.
Could you put Warren before Steph? What's he done?
Maybe that's just recency bias because I'm watching him on ITV3 at the moment. But he did have a bit of a spark to him. But then I guess so did Steph. It's just 30 odd years ago. It's a long time to remember. Who else? I mean, in terms
it's really hard for me to see.
We've got Ida, we've got Tony, we got Harry Flagg.
Tony.
I think
Tony
at 27 there.
Yeah.
I've got very few opinions on him, which I think is what's going to get you into there. I would probably say that maybe somebody like Ida or Harry might come next.
Harry Flagg?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Because he doesn't mean anything to you, and as lovely as a character as he was, even if you like him, you can't deny that he's not made that much of a stamp on Corrie history. Then if I go Ida, she was in the show less than a year.
But she was the mum of
She
Ken
was
Barlow.
Even if I think, and we've seen a fair bit of those early episodes, what do I think about Ida? Not a whole lot. She didn't have really a story, did she?
She could butter bread like nobody's business. You think Shona can butter a barn? You should have seen Ida.
I've just got a bit of a warm, fuzzy fondness for her just because of being part of that old black and white era. And her death episode was pretty spectacular, but she wasn't even in the episode where she died. Who should we have next? I mean, I'm thinking, it's going to be Doreen or Natasha or even Concepta.
No, Natasha.
You reckon?
Yeah, Natasha is, what number's that?
24.
Then you put Vicky next.
I would say Vicky should be a bit higher.
No.
Why is this?
Because she's boring.
I think that she had more going for her than some of the others that we've got here.
All right, then who's that? Doreen then.
I think
Doreen next.
I do love Doreen in the same way as I love Harry Flagg. I've got more of a fondness for Harry than I do Ida and Natasha, but I would say probably those two have got a little bit more significance.
Who's that?
We've got Tanya Pooley.
Yeah, put her in. Tanya Pooley's 22.
22 for Tanya, and then we've got one more for this final 10.
Vicky.
Do you think that Vicky should be lower down than Concepta and David?
Yes, David Barlow. David Barlow was a dreamboat. Put Vicky in. Yeah, put Vicky in.
See, look, I'm just getting busted back
and now we have
I think
David Barlow, number 20.
You're going to put David lower than Concepta?
Yeah, because I like Concepta.
I would put those either way around. I think they're fairly on even pegging
I've
for
seen
me.
more of Concepta, and I feel more akin to her.
Oh, but David and Irma were a lovely, lovely couple, weren't they? That scene where they get together at the Blue John Mines and he proposes to her on the bus was utterly iconic. And I don't think
because of Irma.
Yeah, but I don't think I've seen anything of Concepta so far that makes me feel the same way as that particular scene did.
I like Concepta because she's similar age to me.
At one point she was.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Don't you tell... I'm thinking...
You say, don't you what?
Don't tell me what to do next, otherwise it is just turning into... We want to do this together. I'm thinking that... maybe Linda...
Yeah.
Next, in term we're starting to get into more memorable territory here. Had the big stories, had a bit of spark to her, bit of a Marmite character. I don't think that Pam Hobsworth can get much higher into our list.
No, 17.
I mean, she's honestly lucky to have made it that high, because
But she's skating past on a good looks.
If we compare her to the likes of Doreen. I mean, she's a good, 7 places ahead of her? Is one more important than the other?
I love Auntie Pam.
Not necessarily. I think that Auntie Pam's there
farm that everybody lives on.
I think as kind of cultish, legendary status, Auntie Pam gets the higher spot.
Who had
compared to Doreen?
A more iconic basket of sandwiches than Auntie Pam? Nobody.
Can we have Jude next?
Who's this?
We've got Jude.
Is that Jude?
Yeah, we got Jude. As I don't know, I feel bad having him higher than some of those others. But again, in terms of
around.
Well,
who'd you swap him with?
I just think that in terms of
bad camera.
Sorry, in terms of Corrie legendary status,
he's not higher. I mean, Concepta's better than him. Yep.
Maybe she is.
Yeah, she is.
But
you don't.
But we've seen the whole of Jude's stint, and we've only seen snippets of Concepta and David, so it's difficult to judge.
Concepta was the first barmaid in Coronation Street.
Yeah, so
she's iconic.
Do you want to put her higher?
Yeah.
Do you want to shuffle her up a little bit?
Just put Jude.
Are we going to put Jude lower than Linda Sykes?
Yes, I like Linda.
Okay, well, should we put Concepta just at the highest so far at number 16 then? I really don't think she can go much higher than this. I'm kind of thinking Dee Dee, Molly kind of next.
Molly.
Do you want to, just because of... They really did a number on her character, didn't they? When they put her together with Kevin. She had the potential to be much higher.
They did a number on her, but she was kind of dull.
Yes.
She was just nice.
I'm not going to deny that.
So who really cares?
Craig.
Yep, Craig.
Craig and then Dee Dee. Dee Dee's just not been in it long enough. I feel bad putting her higher. She needs more time, and maybe if we were to do this again in 5 years' time, maybe she'd be higher or lower.
Being in every story is not enough for you. What more can she do?
She just hasn't had the main story of her own yet. But PC Tinker is a bit of a joke. When they gave him that's a comment to CID last year, honestly, I couldn't roll my eyes back further.
I think that's fair.
But Dee Dee, as a new character, 13, I think that's a fairly...
Well, she's done bloody well.
That's a position to be proud of.
Yeah.
We're into more of the legends now. I'm going to say that probably Kieran is less legendary than Don Brennan, or would you put them the other way around?
I really can't judge it. Are those two?
I mean, you know Kieran more than Don. I think we're just gonna have to. You're gonna have to trust me on this one. And Don just naturally is more of a legendary character, partly through being in that real golden era than Kieran was. He was more of a side character. So Kieran at 12. Don at 11, and then that gives us our top 10.
Okay.
I think.
Let's just pause and talk about who's our top 10. Who's in the top 10?
Should we just confirm our 30 to 11 at the moment and see if there's any we want to change about? So 30, we've got Billy Williams. I don't think there's much going to be any arguing there. A few little controversial ones, but I'm happy to stick with Warren Baldwin at number 29, Steph Barnes at 28, Tony Stewart at 27, Harry Flagg at 26. I do love him. Ida Barlow at 25, and Natasha at 24. Sorry, Natasha fans. Doreen Heavey, another one I do have a soft spot for, but not necessarily important in the context of the show. Tanya at 22, followed by Vicky Arden to round out the 20s, apart from David, who's at 20. Jude Appleton at 19. Then we got Linda at 18. Auntie Pam at 17. She feels like she's too high.
I think David should be higher than Jude and Pam and Vicky. I think David should be number 17.
David at... Okay, so we put then jumping up there. I think that Pam should be below Linda.
Okay.
If we have Jude at 19...
No, Jude's at 20.
Sorry, 20. Then Pam at 19. Linda at 18. David Barlow at 17. Then Concepta. That feels right.
That's my personal choice over those two, but because I haven't seen as much of David.
Molly at 15. Then we got Craig, Dee Dee, Kieran, and Dom Brennan.
At number 11.
Who have we got in our top 10? We have got Maxine Peacock. We got Percy Sugden, Debbie Webster, Daniel Osborne, Gary Windass, Toya Battersby Habib, Jim McDonald, Steve McDonald, Emily, and Pat Phelan. And I'm going to say out of that lot, it's going to be Debbie and Maxine that are going to be rounding out the bottom part of the top 10. Which one at 10, which one at 9? If it depends whether we're going for personal feelings and also the, you know, with current Corrie in our head, Debbie should be a little bit higher.
Debbie
but
more than Maxine. I think if Maxine hadn't been killed, she wouldn't have left such a great memory, because
that is part of it, but I think she was fairly likeable, but in a nice, safe kind of way. It's just the amount that Debbie is underused, you know.
Yeah, I know.
She's not got a chance to screw up, because they're not giving her anything to do other than, like you said, going and checking that everyone's drinks are okay at the Chariot Square.
I still want to put Maxine at 10.
Okay, and then can we have Debbie at 9? I wouldn't feel right having her any higher than that when in the company of all these other legends here.
Then I reckon Percy Sugden.
I would go Gary over Percy.
Gary? No.
Yes, I would. Percy was great fun. He was a horrible, cantankerous old git. Who really added a lot. You know, who can forget him being perennially pursued by the Randy Phyllis Pierce? That got so much comedy.
Well, they make TV shows called Baby Reindeer out of situations like that, Michael. It's not funny.
I would really feel uncomfortable putting a legend like Percy Sugden lower than Gary, who is just kind of a fairly solid modern character. Well, we Give a give or take here. So you want to
put Percy in?
I would probably go Percy at number 7.
What are we doing here then?
Right.
So we've got 6
into
left.
The difficult
we've got
category now.
Emily, Steve, Pat, Toya, Daniel, and
I think
Jim.
You know, thinking about significance and personal taste, there's a fairly obvious number 6 here.
Oh, who do you think it is?
Daniel.
Yeah,
because I don't love him at the moment, but I recognise his significance to modern Corrie. You got the link to Ken, fantastic actor, involved in some big story like the Who Pushed Ken, Sinead's death.
Yeah, he's had some big stories, but he doesn't have as much history as the other.
No, he's a real linchpin kind of character.
I think in another 10 years you'd be putting him a bit higher.
I think he's almost as high as he is, just through force of sheer goodwill of, well, he is Ken's son.
I think he's a significant character in modern Corrie.
I think there's definitely people that would put Percy higher, but with I'll happily put him at number 6.
Well, I can't wait to see the listener vote on this one. I'm really interested. So
considering that the last one was fairly similar to us, I do wonder, what it's going to look like for this time, because it's not as obvious a choice, is it? This
is funny, because now really what we've got to do here is pick 3 characters to go through, haven't we? So we've got Emily, Jim, Steve, Pat, and Toyah.
I can't see Pat not making it into the top 3.
Pat's in the top 3.
I don't. Does he? At the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily matter at the moment. So I'll just
put him at my number 1 of these 5 characters. Pat Phelan to me is the number 1.
He's not the most significant, but if we're just going with who's made the most impact on us, who's been the most important to us on the podcast.
It's the podcast.
I would happily put him at number 1 there, but I can totally see that other people, if you're just going with historical significance, there are lots of other characters there that are going to be higher.
And this is just a snapshot in time. As always, every time. We're not just talking, we're talking about ourselves in the present and what we think and how we feel about stuff. And it changes from day to day.
I think there's a fairly obvious number 5 there as well. I think it's our Toyah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I can't. She's not a top 3. She's not, unfortunately. When we look at the competition here, I think it'd be too to of us
I don't mind
to
being
put her
biased.
into the top 3. Even if she was number 4, I'd be happy-ish. But to compare with utter legends, widely agreed upon legends as Emily and Jim and Steve, it does not feel right to me to have Toyah in the top 3.
To me, I think Emily has to be number 2.
Okay.
I think Emily's number 2 because, and I think if you only know
Out
Emily...
of respect.
No. If you only know Emily as an old lady, you're probably like, well, I guess she's, an original, so...
Yeah.
But no, you watch her from the beginning, she's actually a fascinating character. And like I said...
Really, really is.
I really admire those characters in Coronation Street that have cohesive trajectories, where you can look at them and go, this feels like a real person's life story. And Emily is one of the few characters where you can look at her and go, yeah, it doesn't feel like this was just made up. It feels like they just followed a real woman around and wrote down what she did.
You're absolutely right.
Some of it was, quite, sensational, but it wasn't like, come on now, that didn't happen. Her husband was murdered. She had the bigamist storyline, but nothing really truly outrageously off the wall happened. No. And you can definitely see her future. Well, if you look at Miss Nugent in episode whatever she came, was it the second episode? She wasn't in the first.
No. She wasn't in. She didn't start until early 1961.
If you look at Miss Nugent in that first episode she's ever written, you can imagine Emily as in whenever she left, 2010 or whatever. I don't remember when
13, 14.
Yeah. I like that about her, and I think that she is part of Coronation Street history, and she's also one of these people that feels. I mean, they all do in a certain sense, but she feels like a product of her time. She feels like she's authentically the era that she lived through. She was of that time.
Might I suggest how we could round out our lists? Because to me, it feels like it should go Steve at 3, Jim at 4, and Toyah at 5. Steve, because the McDonald's clan have been utterly iconic and kind of a linchpin family to the show for the best part of 30 years now, 35 years. And as Steve has been in the show all that time, he's not had a break from it. He's not at the top of his game at the moment, but when he has been at his best, he's been absolutely superb. He's been funny, he's done the drama really well, he's been cool, he's been the ladies' man, he's had all of those classic relationships, Becky and Karen, especially, proper iconic short-term Corrie couples. Jim, as fun as a character as he was more of a blip. He was in Coronation Street for 10 years before he went off to jail, and then he was just back and forth every now and then.
Out, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, I love it when they do that, but I don't think we're going to see him again now.
I don't think you can really consider him to be a main character in the same way you can Steve.
No, which is why I think that Steve should go higher than Jim, and Toyah.
Well, you put Jim higher than Toyah.
I think that Jim has got more
charisma. He's got more. Sorry, no, I love Toya. I think that he's got the catchphrases help. I think he's a bigger personality than Toya, who still, is underused at the moment. But even now, she's a kind of a bit of a softly spoken.
I can't believe you're overlooking Toya's catchphrases, which are, "I'm sorry you feel that way," and "Would you like a wasabi pea with your beer?"
Or "We've got veggie lasagna for tea tonight. Let's get one out of the freezer to defrost."
That's very interesting, Sam.
Can we go with this? Can we go with this as our final top 30?
I'm not completely happy with it, but I don't think you're completely happy with it either.
I think, if we're doing it as shared, we've got to have a bit of a give and take and compromise here.
I definitely would have... See, it's hard because you can say I would have put so-and-so higher, but it means moving somebody else down.
Exactly.
You don't necessarily want to move.
No joint positions in Corrieliminator. And when 3 go through, 27 get cast into the flames, or whatever happens to them. I don't know.
No, what's going to happen to Toya?
Maybe it's just down the sinkhole.
Oh.
It's alright. If Toya's down the sinkhole, she'll just live off the moss and
the lichen.
The lichen that's down there. She'll be ruling the place. Right, so there we go. There's our top 30. Billy Williams all the way down to Pat Phelan at number 1. If you got the video version, you can see this all out in front of you. If you're listening, I hope you've got a good memory, because I'm not going to go through the list again.
To follow what we were saying.
Yeah, well, if you didn't, just go and check out the video version. Just trying to plug our YouTube channel a bit.
To the end if
now,
you
don't forget, if you go online now, you'll be able to vote for this yourself. So I'll post a link to the Google Forms once this goes online, and you can take part in the listener vote. Thank you to everybody who voted before, and the listeners voted top 3 will join Gail and Vera and who was the third one? Blanche in the ultimate listener voted Corrieliminator Battle Royale early next year. So,
it's exciting, isn't it?
It's very exciting. Oh, I love that. Thank you to everybody who gave us all the lovely feedback on the first Corrieliminator. I hope you enjoyed this one just as much. And I don't know whether we're going to fit one into June. We've got a few other things coming up in the next month, but if not, then definitely early July we'll be back with round 3, or part 3, as it seems to be called. I don't know why I've called it parts. I think I need to change it to round. But anyway, that's enough waffling. It's 7:35. We're missing Coronation Street. So
yeah, for you guys.
Yeah. Thank you everybody for listening or watching, and see you next week or at the weekend for our next episode. I'm going to wave for the YouTube people. Bye. Bye. Oh, there's Gemma's hand as well. Bye.